Hello, everyone. This is MMA Interesting Prospects podcast. Today, our guest is Amun Cosme. Hello, Amun. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good, thanks. You had a very good last year, 2023, because you had
Mhm.
two fights, two finishes, and I think that there were these were very good performances. But overall, what do you think about last year, and what do you think will happen this year for you?
All right. Last year was a good year for me. We were supposed to have I have a current fight coming up in March 15th. It's for the UFL, the United Fight League bantamweight championship. That fight was supposed to happen in December, so I was supposed to have three fights last year, but it got postponed. Last year was a good year. I would have liked to cap the year off with that third fight and get a third finish for the title, but things happened, so they had to move the card to March. Uh, Last year was a good year, but I'm expecting to perform even better this year. I've been doing nothing but training and prepping for this fight. And even though it got postponed, I haven't left the gym. So I'm just expecting this year to kind of build off the momentum that we built last year and really take some big leaps and strides. And obviously win that bantamweight title. And that'll actually put me in that next like tier of like separating myself even further from the rest of the bantamweights in the division.
And will it be a five-round fight?
Yes, yes, I'm excited about that. So five fives, so a true title fight.
And actually, your opponent is also a very good fighter. He is a
Yes,
LFA veteran, so I think that for now it would be a biggest challenge of your career.
yes, I definitely agree. Justin Wetzel, if I'm not mistaken, is 9-2, so he has a really good team out of I think it's out of Denver. Team Elevate with Corey Sandhagen and those guys. So really good opponent, and that's what this is all about. Like, if you're not trying to fight the best guys, then you probably shouldn't be trying to fight. Like, that's not what we do this for. You want the best competition out there, and that's what I really liked about the UFL. They put the best 135ers in a tournament, and then we basically just eliminated each other. I was on the A bracket, he was on the B bracket. I finished both my guys, he finished both his guys. So the two best guys are facing each other. You don't have to worry about like, oh, does this guy deserve a shot? Does this or you don't have to worry about that. I finished my guys, he finished his guys, and now the two best guys of the division are going to be facing each other for the title. And that's what people want to see. They don't want to see the number one guy face a number 8 guy. They want to see the number one and the number 2 guys, or the two guys who they think are number one, face each other for that title. So that's exactly what this is turning out to be. So I'm excited about it.
In the tournament, there is no politics like we like this guy or we like this guy. It's just a matter of how good you are.
Yeah. So what people don't know that there's a lot of politics in fighting, and like if depending on where you're at, if you're fighting for a lower level promotions, you're not on like Bellator or UFC. Like when you're on more local promotions, like whatever does the promotion better is where they'll go towards. But for the United Fight League, there hasn't been any of that. It's like, hey, you come, you perform, and you make your bed, you sleep in it. So there's a little back end politics that happened my last fight that a lot of people don't even know is I took all the risk with little to no reward in the last fight because my opponent missed weight by like 4 pounds. So he pretty much eliminated himself out of the tournament, and I didn't have to take that fight. So I could have taken the easy road and said, hey, look, I got my knockout finish in February. This guy missed weight 2 fights in a row. So he literally eliminated himself from championship contention. And I didn't even have to fight that fight. But I'm like, that's not what a fighter does. I'm like, I came all the way to Arizona to fight. So I essentially took all the risk because if I lose that fight, now I can't fight for a title because like now I just lost in a tournament. But if I back out, I got a guaranteed spot. So it's like I'm a risk taker. I wasn't gonna take the easy road and be like, well, nah, I'm not gonna fight because I don't want it to happen. I'm gonna see who wins the other side and see who I have to face and no injuries, no nothing. I said, no, look, we came here to fight. I want to show you guys that I'm the best. So I pretty much assumed all the risk. Like it was no risk. It was like no like really big upside for me. It was all risk because it's like, well, look, if you lose now, like you can't go fight for the title, and then you lost to a guy who didn't make weight, so you could just kind of like hang back and just wait for your time, your time. And my coaches and I and my team have really been practicing what we call aggressive patience. Like you want to be aggressive, but you don't want to be reckless. So it's like, hey, we went in there with that same mentality. It's like, we'll be patient, but patient doesn't mean sitting back and waiting for your opportunity. So we took the opportunity to be aggressive and still be patient. And we took care of business. And because we took care of business, now it looks even better for the final.
And actually, he's a very dangerous guy because he had like 9 knockouts out of
Yeah.
11 wins. So it was a big risk for you.
He finished all his opponents. He had 11 wins, 11 finishes. His 9 knockouts and two submission victories. So we knew that he was really, really dangerous. But like I believe in me, my team believes in me, and we don't believe that there's any one area in MMA where I'm not efficient in. I am better in areas than other areas, but it's not like, oh, this guy's good at striking. Now I just gotta go take him down every second. I gotta be like desperate. Or this guy's good at grappling. I can't get taken down at all. We don't believe that. I truly believe I'm a well-rounded mixed martial artist. So if I need to keep the fight standing, we can do that. And if I need to take the fight to the ground, we can do that. If I need to push it to the cage, we can do that. And I have ability to fight from either offensively or defensively, regardless if my back's down or I'm on top. And I think that last fight kind of showed that. It's like, hey, we basically stood up striking for the whole first round. I came back to the corner. It was like, hey, we know if you can get his back to the cage, you can get the takedown. And we already had it set up. So as soon as we had an exchange, I was coming off the cage. I heard my corner tell me, hey, don't let him off the hook. Like press in. As soon as I pressed in, got the takedown, and I didn't have to rush it because I took him down right in my corner. So like because I took him down in my corner, they were literally like, "Hey, you got a minute and a half. Like no rush. Like just make it like put some damage on him. He'll give you the way out. Just put some damage on him." Then it was like, "Hey, you got a minute. Hey, you got 30 seconds." So like it's beneficial to like have such a good team like Cole Miller, Lathan Lawson, Bubby Mitchell, Rush, and Miller Martial Arts, and then they believe in me as much as I believe in me. So no matter where the fight goes, like we're prepared for it. But ultimately, wherever my opponent is the weakest is where we'll keep it the longest. That way, it gives me that biggest opportunity to win.
Cole Miller is probably a great guy for this job because he had so much experience in the UFC on the
Yes.
highest level. So it's like hard to deny him as the coach.
Yeah, and it's not just the coach. Like he's still training. Like I get to train with him full time. So like he's also like from an outside perspective coaching, and then he gets in there and like we were just doing jujitsu the other day, and then we did MMA the other day, and we were rolling. So it's like I get to feel that UFC level experience, not just coaching, but actually physically fighting and technically wise. So I know that, hey, I'm on the level of these guys, or this is the level of competition that I'm be facing. And if I can do well against this type of caliber opponent, then I know that the person across from me, it kind of gives me a boost of confidence. Like, hey, man, I'm fighting and training with UFC vets and level guys. So I know when I go in there against my opponent, and he has a UFC stud in his corner too. So that's what makes this fight great. It's not like I don't think it's lopsided one side or another, but it's my job to go in there and make it look like it is.
And overall, what do you think about UFL as the promotion?
I absolutely love it. I started my fight career in 2016. I wasn't an early martial artist. I didn't do martial arts I did like Taekwondo for like a year or two when I was like 8, but like I don't really I feel like everybody did that and then like you just stop doing it. But like I didn't really get back into martial arts until I was older, probably like in my early 20s, 2021, and then I started taking it more seriously. So I didn't have my first fight till 2016. I was 25. And I had an amateur career for about 3.5, 4 years, and then I went pro in 2020. And I fought for a lot of promotions, and I absolutely love what the UFL is doing. I'm like No matter who interviews me, I'll probably say the same thing over and over again, but I can't just express my gratitude enough. Like just the fact that I have health care and they're compensating me as far as like with good pay as well as sponsorship opportunities. Like I haven't had that chance with any other promotion on my way up. And I'm not speaking bad about other promotions. I'm just saying they're just doing it that good. Like I feel like the things they're doing should be standard across, all fighting platforms. Like fighters get insurance for one night, but like you get injured during training more than you do in fighting. Because if I'm gonna fight, it's one night, 15 minutes or 25 minutes. But in order to get to that fight, I'm training 3-4 hours a day for 5-6 days a week. Your body breaks down, you get hurt, you get injured. And most times, I would say I could only remember maybe about 2 or 3 times out of 16 or 15 total fights that I've had, amateur and pro, that I went into a fight uninjured. And I don't mean like hurt, I mean injury, like separated AC joint, meniscus, like, partially torn, like UCL, like serious injuries, like I had neck injury. Like it's like, and you're going in trying to like just have a poker face, but like that hey, there's certain areas where I will be compromised, and you have to do your hardest not to be in those areas. So like the things that the UFL are doing with the fighters, just the opportunity that they're giving the fighters with the health insurance and the sponsorships and the bigger, boost in pay, as well as the exposure. Those guys are like promoting us like crazy. And the fact that they have Rampage Jackson and Frank Mir, Tito Ortiz, like as a part of their organization, they're not just doing stuff out of nowhere. They got champions, all former champions, Tito Ortiz, Frank Mir, and Rampage, all former champions of the UFC are paired with Harrison Rogers to run this league. So the things that they're doing are really like changing the way MMA is going to be looked at, as well as how the fighters are dealt with in the near future. We even have for everybody who entered the tournament has stocks in the company, and it's like, well, I've never, like, I don't know nothing about stocks and bonds and trading and this, but I know that, hey, if you're giving me a percentage of this house, that means that I'm a part owner of it. And if I'm part owner of the house, I'm gonna make sure the house is taken care of. So they're giving the fighters a part of the house. So they're like, hey, you get a piece, you get a piece. So the fighters feel a part of something, not just like they're fighting for you and then they got to leave the house. Hey, I invite you, and then after your fight's over, you got to go. Like, so it's like, hey, no, this is your house too. Like you have a room, you can do whatever you need here. So they're providing a lot of opportunities, and I can't speak, I can't express my gratitude enough on just the opportunities that they continue to give to the fighters.
And they also have a few really good fighters, like top level guys who
Yeah.
really could fight in the UFC and maybe even be ranked. So the like level of competition is also very high.
Yes, that was the first thing I noticed. Like the prior to fighting for the UFL, I fought for Jorge Masvidal's promotion Icon, and I fought on 3 of those. And that felt like the UFC. I said, "Holy crap! I'm on UFC Fight Pass. I'm in Miami. Like the lights. Like I'm a bit of a ham. Like I'm not a show off, but like I like the lights. Like that doesn't bother me. Some people when they see the lights, they get like ooh, like a little nervous. I'm like, no, it's time to show you guys what I've been working on for. I've been a martial artist for 11 years, going on 12 years or 12 years, plus. And it's like, this is my opportunity to show you guys what I've been working on in the dark for my whole entire life. So that moment doesn't really like scare me or like give me those kind. I get nervous, but it's like an excitement more than anything. And when I fought for those Icon fights, I was like, man, I'm one fight away from being on UFC. And then I lost that last Icon fight. If I would have won that one, I would probably be in the UFC, just because the main event winners of all the Icon shows all got signed. And I finished the guy. I mean, I had a fight of the night against Alexander Shank. I finished the guy from Kyrgyzstan. And I'm like, yo, if I finish this guy on the main event, like that's my contender series or my shot. And then, it happened. I got caught in the guillotine. And then I got signed to the UFL. And I was just really blown away with the level of competition at the UFL, because I fought on UFL 1. And I was just like, if this is their first show and the competition level is really this high, you're talking about guys that I honestly, I'm like, man, some of these guys could be fighting in the UFC. I feel like 100% I could be fighting in the UFC if the opportunity presented itself. If they came and like gave me opportunities, like, hey, I feel like I have the work ethic, the talent, and the skill to fight in there with the other 135ers. And I'm like, I'm looking at some of these other fights, and I'm like, bro, like these fights are high level, and I'm like, the fact that they were able to get that kind of talent in their first show, I was like, man, I wonder where this goes. Like, how if you do it once, it's cool, but that doesn't mean you can always do it. But then they did it again and again, and now they're doing it again. And I'm like, all right, this is saying that like they have the power to get like the top prospect and contenders, and even guys that could have been like maybe signed with the UFC or Bellator who got cut or this, they're going to be looking for opportunities. And with the pay and the health insurance and the notoriety and the Rampage Jackson and this, I'm like, my first show, I'm over here talking with Jared Cannonier and Ben Henderson, and I'm like, yo, this is crazy. Like, I'm sitting in the front row after my fight because I had to come back in because the winner, they had the A-side fight that night. So it was like, hey, after you fight, hang out cage side. And then when the next 35ers fight, whoever wins, y'all face off because y'all the next match. So I'm like sitting, and I'm like, it's Chris Angel over here, and basketball players over here. Is Rampage Jackson, Jared Cannonier, Ben Henderson. I'm just like, the kind of star power that was there. I was like, yo, this is a UFC level show. And I was just like, they're really doing it. And they didn't just do it for one show. They did it for UFL 1, UFL 2. And then every time that I fought on the first and the third one, the shows just got bigger and the fights got better. And I'm like, oh man, this is game changer for MMA. So like for me, it just brought a smile to my face just to like know that it's not, there's no favoritism. Like, oh, we want these people. It's like, hey, look, y'all are in a tournament. There's no politics. The people in the tournament, you're going to get better pay. You're going to get sponsorship opportunities. You get stocks in the company. Go fight for your house. And that's what it feels like. And everybody's in there fighting for their house.
And it would be interesting to see like when they will do like 10 shows or 15 shows, how far they can go, because for now the free shows were great. It was like top level guys. It was a great production, so it would be interesting in this upcoming years to see how far they can go.
Yeah, I can now talk about this because it just got released. Because there's a lot of stuff that happens on the back end that people are like, man, what's going on? Why the show got postponed? Why did this? So they just signed a deal. I don't know the name of the company, but they just signed with another streaming company. I think it's called Kick. Pretty big company. When we streamed the fights on Rumble live streams, I think the last UFL, the UFL 3, the last one that I fought on, had like 278,000 streams that night of the fight. That is a lot of streams. So it's like, that's crazy for somebody's third show to be pulling in 250,000 views live. It's not like, oh, the video's been on YouTube or Rumble for a year and people are going back and watching it. It was like from when it aired to when we were done, the following week, they posted out the numbers. I'm like, when I go on Rumble, I'm like, it's 278,000 views. Like that's big. And like you said, if after 3 shows, like I can't wait to see 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way. Once you hit about double digits, 10, 15, 20, and you catch a groove. And like I said, I'm on the fighting end, so I don't know all the back end stuff. I only know what has been told for me. But like as far as like what has been told, everything they've told me, they've literally done since the first UFL. So I don't have any doubt that everything they're telling me they're gonna do. And like that's exactly where they're at. They're like, hey, we're looking to have another 4 or 5 shows this year. We have another feeder league where we're bringing in all new, more competition. I'm like, yo, I can't wait till we get to show 10, 15, 20. Like,
And I saw on your Instagram that you last year you spent some time in Thailand. And
yes.
will you plan to like train somewhere in Thailand also for the upcoming fight?
And so the plan was to fight in December and then go back to Thailand and then come back before my next fight. But because the fight got postponed, I didn't want to spend the majority of my time in Thailand uh, um, for most of my camp. Because when I go in like a training camp, I want to be with my coaches the most. And when I went to Thailand last time, I only had my head coach went with me, Lathan Lawson. He went with me with the majority of the time. But when I go back, I want to work a lot more on my traditional Muay Thai and do some MMA while I'm out there. But I want the focus to be here in the country, close to all my coaches, which we're all within 20 minutes of each other. So I want to be with all my coaches here. After this fight, I am going back to Thailand probably for, I don't know, maybe a month and a half, 2 months. And I kind of consider that like a small training camp. I'm not really concerned about uh, uh, okay, well, I'm using this to prep for a fight. Everything in martial arts is about skill development, like conditioning and getting your body in shape. That to me, I like that's the simple part. For me, it's about skill development. You can be in shape, but your chin doesn't need nothing to get knocked out. Your legs don't need nothing to start getting tore up from calf kicks and leg kicks. And if you get hit in the liver, I don't care how many 6-packs and 8-packs you got, you're gonna drop or you're gonna feel it. So getting your body conditioned is cool, but skill development is cooler. So it's like, hey, I want to continue to develop my skills as a martial artist because I'm not a Muay Thai fighter. I'm not just a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I'm not just a wrestler. I'm not just a kickboxer. I'm a mixed martial artist. So we have a round plate and we have to make our plate bigger. We can't just say, okay, I'm just going to be a striker and then leave all this other area. Now the plate's not that wide. You got to have a wide base in martial arts if you want to be successful long term, because at the level we're fighting at, it's not as easy as you're a striker and I'm a grappler. I'm going to go take you down. It don't work like that no more because we're not fighting amateurs and low-level pros. If you look at all the fights, you've seen fights standing, you've seen submissions, you've seen people high-level wrestling, you see people with high-level wrestlers get submitted, you've seen the wrestlers get knocked out, you've seen the grapplers get knocked out. So it's you have to be good in multiple areas. So after this next fight, when I go back to Thailand, is to develop more skills with striking. I have good striking and I feel like you can always improve. So I'm like, hey, Muay Thai is one of my favorite arts with the elbows, and the clinch relates a lot to MMA. So I'm like, clinch fighting is huge when you're on the cage and you're pressed up super close with elbows and knees and sweeps and stuff like that. So I'm like, I'm going back to the motherland and maybe spend another month and a half, 2 months out in Thailand and more skill development.
And your last two fights were knockouts. You won by TKO, but you also have submission wins, especially armbars, because
Yeah,
I think that you have overall 4 armbars.
yeah, I have
Against,
4 or 5. Yeah, that's my
so
favorite submission. I love that submission, and it's funny because I have, I think, 4 arm bars, and they're all from separate areas. They're not like, oh, you just mounted everybody and got the arm bar. I got one arm bar from mount. I got one arm bar from guard. I got one arm bar from side control, and I actually have one arm bar from turtle. The guy was turtled up, and I was punching him, and I knew he was gonna roll because that was the only way I was giving him. That was my pro debut, and that was probably the slickest arm bar I think I've ever hit, because the speed that it happened, I wasn't even thinking, I'm going to get him with an armbar. I was hitting him and I knew he was going to roll. And as he rolled, I just went. And I'm like, you want your submissions to be set up at that speed, because if you're setting them up while somebody's moving in transition, it eliminates their ability to defend it. And all the arm bars that I got, I set up in transition. So that's kind of like my favorite. That's my favorite submission. I think I have a total 5 or 6 submission victories. 6 total, I think. Rear naked choke, guillotine, 4 arm bars. Yeah, so I had 6 total, and and then a couple TKOs. And that's what I was telling about it. I'm like, if you look on paper, there's not one area you can take me to defeat me. You say, okay, well, we'll do standing. Okay, this guy got two knockouts and a TKO. Okay, well, we'll go on the ground. He's got 6 submission victories. It's like, all right, well, we'll just cage wrestle. And I'm like, that's probably not your best idea. That's probably not a good idea for you. I do a lot of slick shit off the cage. So I'm like, I wouldn't put myself in one particular area. So I just, when I first started fighting, everybody thought I was a grappler. I was like, oh my God, he's got all these submissions. And then my coach was like, everybody thinks you're a grappler. This is perfect because you haven't actually shot a takedown in 5 fights. Like, you hit people and they don't want to get hit. So they're shooting on you, or they're trying to clinch you. And then now we're using your Muay Thai or wrestling or jiu-jitsu to take them to the ground after they engage. But I didn't really start shooting for takedowns and stuff like that until I went pro, because I was like, man, it's time to, I've been wrestling. I'm like, it's time to start going forward, not just like hitting people going forward, but use my grappling. And uh, then I went the distance as well. So it's like, hey, are we going to just try and tire them out? Like, good luck with that one, because that ain't going to work either.
So it's like pick your poison for your opponent.
Yes, that's what we worked years and years and years for, and we're at a point now where we can play in all the different playgrounds. Is it a water park? Is it a jungle gym? Is it a sandbox? You name it, we can play in it.
And in this year, how many fights would you like to have after the championship fight?
After the championship fight, I always go based off of like what it will take for a proper training camp. A proper training camp, I say you want it to be a minimum of 2 months, so a minimum of 8 to 9 weeks, to prepare for a particular opponent. You know, like it's for game plan and skill. You don't really develop a lot of skills in training camp. That's what people don't understand. What you're doing is sharpening the tools you already have, or using what you have, and then putting it in a game plan. So like if I'm gonna go to war and you have a massive army and I have a small army, I'm not trying to take a bunch of tools. I'm saying where we're fighting, we're trying to make it guerrilla warfare. I want to be fast because I can't fight the strong guy by being strong. And I can't fight the fast guy by being fast. So you have to take the right tools for the job. And that's all a training camp is saying, hey, this guy does this, or he has this tendencies, and I know these tendencies for me give me the highest percent chance to win. And this is the areas where he's the weakest. So I want to take him to these areas. So I want to take these tools and this game plan into the fight. And that's how I look at a training camp. And I would like to do it 3 to 4 times a year. I think 3 is a perfect number, just because 3 to 4 is a perfect, number, because like the fight I had in February, it was a minute and I got a knockout. So it was like I didn't take any damage. I could have fought 3, 4 weeks later, 5 weeks later, 6 weeks later, but like they had to run the other side of the bracket. So I had to wait. That's why I went to Thailand, because after I fought in February, the May fights was for the other 35ers. So I was like, well, since I gotta wait till August, I'm gonna go to Thailand and then come back. But if you have one of those fights where you don't get any like significant damage as far as like injuries where you have to be out to recover for multiple weeks, then I like to say 4. If it's, a title fight where you're going 5-5s, you're fighting another top level opponent, you can't be like, oh, I'm gonna go in there and knock him out in the first round, and then it's 5 rounds and you gotta ice your shins for a week. You got lumps or a stitch or whatever. So I think 3 fights is a good gauge for a year. That way you have 2 months to prep for each fight. So that's 6 months, that's half a year. And through the other half of the year, you're developing skill development. You're getting better. I tell people, when you're just fighting, you get good at fighting. But if you're not developing skills, somebody is watching you fight in all your tendencies and you're not getting better. So they're going to be able to put a game plan into effect to say, oh, okay, this guy does this all the time. I'm going to do this to counter it. So I think 3 fights is good for, 3 fights a year is good for a proper training camp as well as skill development. But if one of those fights, somebody gets knocked out or submitted really quickly and there's not any damage, then yeah, take a 4th fight.
Especially that you, after this, your next opponent also will be like the highest level possible. So it will be not
Yeah.
a 3 and 5 guy, let's say, but also a very, very, very good fighter.
Yes. So after this title fight, I would like to minimum fight another 2 times this year, but I'd really like to get 3 in. So after the title fight in March, I know I'm going to be in Thailand. So I would have to figure out, okay, well, what the next, at least 2. But, if one of those 2s is like a quick, submission or knockout or something like that, then we'll like see if we can get a additional one to make it 4 for the year. But I'm okay with having 3. 3's good.
And when you are in the training camp, how do you deal with the stress of upcoming fight?
I've been dealing with it for a while now, so it is different. It's a little bit different each time depending on like what's going on. But my job as a professional athlete and fighter is just like just to really just to mitigate the stress. So like you hear it, everybody says all the time, you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And it's like I don't want to be too comfortable because then I feel like I'm not doing enough. But I don't want to be so stressed out and so uncomfortable that my body's breaking down and I'm not getting good sleep and I'm anxious and I'm nervous and stuff like that. So like I do a lot of little things to like mitigate my stress. And I learned now as an experienced martial artist, like you can't my first coach ever, because I was always I want to do more, to do more. And one day he just looked at me after training. I was like, what else can I do? He's like, you can't get all the fitness and techniques in one day. And I was just like, yeah, but I know I could do more. And like he was like, sometimes more is just more. It's not better. Like you're just running yourself into the ground. Like, and so I would try and do these really extremely hard training camps. And then if my body's breaking down, okay, I'm gonna try and do all this recovery in a day or two. It's like it doesn't work like that. Not just physically, but mentally, because fighting is fucking stressful. You're not spending time with your family and your friends and this and that. You're saying no to the cookies and no hanging out if you have a girlfriend or your nightlife. You're saying no to all these things that are ways to like kind of release. So you're kind of building this own pressure on yourself as well as the pressure of, hey man, you're gonna fight, you're gonna fight, you're gonna fight, you're gonna fight. Hey man, you ready to fight? You're gonna win. You're gonna bring the title back. It's like your teams, your close family and friends and teammates and members at your gym are doing all of this. You got to promotions yellow. So it's like that stuff can either like make you feel like this, or you can embrace it and learn that like, hey, you can use that. So I basically implement like daily and weekly things that I do as de-stressors to kind of keep me in a good middle ground. If I feel myself getting too like, there have been times where I'm in training camp where my weight will just go like boom, it'll just drop and I have to pull back for a week because my body thinks I'm cutting weight already. And I'm like, no, like, don't do it. Like, I'll jump on the scale, I'll start feeling tired, or I'll be like firing on all cylinders. Like, they're like, hey, we're just gonna do a light couple things on the pads. I'm like, bah, 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 bah. I'm like grappling really, and I'm just like going. They're like, hey, we gotta pull you back just a tad. We still got 5 weeks. I'm like, I want to feel like this for 5 weeks. It's like that's not gonna happen. You're peaking. You need to like kind of pull it back. That means I've dealt with all the stress how I needed to, and my body's doing it. So I got to pull back a little bit and then repeat. And exactly what you have behind you. You have a bookshelf. I read daily, or just about daily, at least 5, 6 days a week. I read a lot. This is my movie collection over there. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, it's a big one.
Yeah, I love movies. To me, I think the greatest gift on the planet is the ability to tell a story. Uh, I just think as humans, that's who we are. Just as humans, we're like all technologically advanced, but yet we still follow the same rules that were written 6,000 years ago on any religion you can name, Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, whatever you believe in. It's like that stuff wasn't created today. That stuff was created thousands of years ago. And those are just stories that were passed down over time, over time, over time. And these things are so powerful. So I think that like storytelling is the most powerful thing that you could, the powerful and like greatest gift that you could have. And I feel like that's what every martial artist is doing there in the ring. Like we're not just telling you our story. We can tell you our story now because we have media and stuff like that. But when I grew up watching MMA, everybody thought these guys and shit were just savages. Like, oh my God, these guys are just angry. Just that, man. I've met some of the most intelligent, kind-hearted people ever in the field of martial arts, and I've worked a lot of jobs, from corporate jobs to what I do now. And I'm like, some of the most amazing human beings ever I've met, martial arts guys and girls fight for a living. And it's like when you fight, you're telling a story, and you might not be verbally telling everybody this story, but when you go in there on that canvas, you're telling your story. And then it's not until like years later they're like, oh my God, this person lost their father and their mom, and they had a rough upbringing, and they were homeless, and they were this. Like, think about this. If you didn't know Francis Ngannou's story, you'd be like, man, that's just some crazy freak athlete. And then you're like, oh my God, this dude was homeless for 6 years. He shoveled sand, in Cameroon. He got locked up all these times. He moved to France. He didn't start boxing until his 20s. You're like, you hear this story, it's like it makes what he did great. Not just what he did, but because of what you went through and overcame it, made him great. So like that's a big part of like my stress reliever is help sharing my story with my family and my friends. So I do a lot of reading. I watch a lot of movies. As far as physically, I try my best to get massages in. I do ice baths and saunas. I'd like to lie to you and tell you I stretch, but I don't really stretch like that. Like after training, twice a day for most days, or a training session and a recovery session a day, basically doing something twice a day, almost every day for 5 to 6 days a week. Last thing I want to do is sit down and stretch, but I know we should. But I also, lift during training camps. I do go on a lot of walks. Like I just walk. I just go out around the neighborhood. I'll walk for like 20-30 minutes and just clear my head. I'll put on music and I just walk. And a lot of times I'll put on like my walkout songs or different speeches, stuff that like allows me to go in my head. I think dealing with stress is just a matter of either being too far in the past or too far in the future. But like the beautiful thing about fighting is when you're punching me in the face and I'm trying to punch you in the face, you don't have time to think about your bills. You don't have time to think about what the media is going to say to you if you won or lost the fight. If you're thinking of those kind of things, you're not in a good space to fight. So fighting makes you present. So like when I go on my walks, I just remind myself like I'm right here, right now, today. I'll put on my walkout music and I'll try and envision like myself walking out to the cage, to the stage, 1,000 people cheering or booing or you suck, go Moon, like lights, camera, action. And I'm walking down the street, and even though like my eyes are open, I'm kind of in another space. And even though I'm in my head, for me, it feels so real. So when I feel all that stuff, I've already been there. So I'm so present. I'm like, I've been here in my head like 20,000 times now. Even though I'm nervous, I'm like, last time, once he closed the door, like, that's it. So anytime like the stress gets too much, sometimes I'll stress myself out by overtraining, and my team will pull me back like, hey, you got to take today off. I'm like, what? Like, they're like, nah, bro, you come back 2 days. You got 2 days. Go get something to eat, chill, go stretch, and like come back. But my team knows me just as well, or if not better, than I know myself, physically and mentally sometimes. So I'm just like, hey, mentally, I'm gonna push through it. They're like, not today. Today is actually just film. We're gonna go film study, and we're gonna do no person to person drills. You're doing all solo drills. I'm like, oh fuck, all right. I didn't know we was gonna do that today because I thought today was wrestling.
If you can tell me, because like training MMA like for the fight is a really hard thing. So how do you deal with the tough days that let's say in the training camp, let's say you are beaten up, you are like very mentally tired. How do you deal with this? How do you like motivate yourself to like do it again and again?
So that's a thing that we hear all the time is like motivate. How you stay motivated? And it's like you don't. Like to be honest, like you don't. There are days where you're mentally taxed, you're physically taxed, you're drained. As athletes, we want to win everything, but if you're winning everything, you're not really learning or developing skills or sharpening tools. And man, you have a lot of days like that in training camps, because training camps are supposed to be hard. They're not supposed to be just like a walkthrough. And personally, I deal with it is reviewing things. Like nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems. And it's like you have to check your own ego. Every fighter has an ego. And when you have bad days, the first thing I like to ask is, why is it a bad day? Because you lost? because your teammates got the better of you today? What about all the days you got the better of your teammates? Was it only a good day because you won? And then you have to understand that when you win, it's never as good as it is. And when you lose, it's never as bad as it is. But that's how it feels. You win, you feel like I'm on top of the world. And then you lose, you like, I'm not valuable. I mean nothing. Like you think so lowly of yourself. So when you're having those bad days, I think it's good to reflect on why you felt like it was bad. Like, why is it a bad day? Is it because you lost? And if you felt like it was a bad day because you lost, get over yourself. Like, I know it sounds harsh, but it's like, get over yourself. You lost. What's more important is not that you lost, is what did you do, right? Oh man, this guy, he passed my guard, he took my back, he choked me out. It's like, all right, that's three things. You didn't stop the guard pass. In transition, you let him get your back. You didn't defend and you got choked out. So that's three things you could fix right there. It's fixable. But I didn't have any energy. You know, my body was feeling beat up. So what? What happens in a fight when you're getting beat up and someone passes your guard? You gonna let them take your back and choke you out? Or are you gonna fight? Right? So you say, okay, well, did I lose because I physically wasn't feeling it, or was there technical things going on? If somebody did three things to you, technically you probably did something wrong, right? Hey, this person's really good at passing the guard. On their way to passing, I could have tried to, shoot for an underhook, do a technical stand up, switch positions, do something. Cool. That's why it's important to record, a training sessions, or if your coaches are watching you while you're training, so you can say, "Hey, man, go back. Look what you just did there. Like, you shouldn't have put your hand there. You posted your forearm out, and you wonder why you got wrist trapped. It's like, yeah, you post your forearm out, they're gonna clap the wrist. What do you do every time somebody else posts their forearm out? You wrist them. So it's like, well, you gave up the wrist ride. That's why he took your back. And now he has a wrist and you're defending with one hand. That's why you got choked out. So I think when you have these mentally and or physically like bad days or just high stress days, you always are looking to correct it. You always try to figure out what's going on, what's going on, what's going on. It's good to think about it, but not to dwell on it. Because if you just dwell on it too long, like then you're like, you don't fix it in your head. You got to fix it on the mat. So you got to figure out what went wrong. Once you figure out what went wrong, next time you go on the mat, address that area. So I build up a lot of confidence in my training camp because I don't focus on what I'm good at in training camp. I know it sounds counterintuitive. In training camps, I put myself in all bad positions pretty much for the most of camp. And in the beginning of camp, I'm getting my ass whooped because I'm starting in all the worst positions and I'm going against other highly skilled opponents. I'm like, hey, you get to start on my back with a body triangle, or you get to start in mount. You can start ground and pound me. You get to start pinning me on the cage with my legs trapped like Khabib. Like, we're starting in all these positions. And then as the camp goes on, you're refining the technique. So when you get tired, the technique is what's at play, not just your conditioning and your strength. Strength and all that stuff is good, but like technique will ultimately like be what's unlimited. Strength, you're gonna run out of. Conditioning is gonna go down. Technique doesn't. Technique is technique, regardless if you're tired or you're not. That's why you want to do the technique the proper way as much times as possible. That way, when you are tired, you're not relying on strength and taking shortcuts. You're doing the right thing at the right time. And when you have those mentally grueling days, you just you don't just like, oh, it is what it is. You just say, hey, look, what was it? Mentally, I was off. I wasn't firing today. Maybe you wasn't firing mentally because like, you just a lot of stress going on, or your body doesn't feel physically right. Most of the time with fighters, most of the time, speaking from experience, not just my personal experience, but I also like train others and being with my teammates. It's three things: sleep, stress, and nutrition. You're not getting proper sleep, so your body's not recovering. And in a training camp, you're going to be training harder than you normally do. So when you're increasing intensity, you're increasing stress levels. When you increase stress levels, sleep gets harder, but sleep is your number one form of recovery. Your number two form of recovery is nutrition. So when you have high stress environment, you lose sleep, and then you might be miss meals or don't eat the right things that you should at the right times. that's a recipe for not feeling good, and that can carry over from one day to the next, to the next, to the next, and build up stress. So normally when athletes are feeling super stressed, super this, normally it's like, hey, go get hydrated, properly hydrated, not just water. Drink your salt water, your electrolytes, your this, get your potassium, magnesium, all this stuff. I do nutrition as well, so it's simple for me because I just set up my week for all the stuff that I need. But I'm like, hey, okay, look, make sure you're hydrated because you're sweating out 3, 4, 5 pounds every time you train. So you got to be hydrated. Otherwise, you're going to be cramping up. Your body's going to give out. Now you're going to be stressed. So it's like stress is already high. So let's make sure you're hydrated. Eat every 3 to 4 hours, like you should be eating the right amount of food. Cool. If after a week or two you're just losing weight way too much too fast, your body's depleted, you probably need to up your calories a little bit more or have a refeed day once or twice a week. And then maybe that'll take a little bit of stress off of you. You recover a little bit better, get some sleep. Or we could just look at your training program. Hey, you're doing 2-a-days, 5 days in a row. You're probably not recovering. So let's do a 2-a-day on Monday. Let's do a Tuesday film and recovery session, and then you can do wrestling Tuesday night. And then we say, hey, we see how we feel Wednesday morning. We can either have the option of pads or partner drilling. Cool. You're burnt out from wrestling Tuesday night, then you'll do pads instead of partner drilling. So it's like there's a lot of different factors, but this comes over the experience of time of having having coaches and people who've been at the highest level. I've literally had Cole Miller be like, nah, bro, you doing too much. I was like, man, I'm ready to grind. He says, no. He says, there's a time for grinding and there's a time for sharpening. You just can't. I had a training camp and the guy didn't show up to the fight the day of the fight. So I trained, cut weight, did all that. The dude didn't show up to the fight. And then they booked me a fight for like 4 or 5, but like 6 weeks later or something like that. And I was like, I'm ready to go back to the grind. And he was like, why? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you can grind something until it's dust. Like, we're not trying to grind anymore, bro. You just came out of a training camp. You didn't fight because your opponent didn't show up. So you're in great fucking shape. We don't need to grind. We just stay sharp. He's like, for about 2 or 3 weeks, you're not even gonna be doing a lot of like crazy shit. I need your body to kind of rebound a little bit, sharpen you up, and then when we're 3 weeks out from this next fight, we'll ramp it back up. Like, and I was like, I never thought about that because I'm just like, all you hear is, oh, you got to train hard every day, every day, every day. And you're like, okay, I'm training hard, training hard, training hard. You're like, oh, like you can train hard every day if you're recovering hard every day, but that's probably not happening. So like when you get in those high stress times and environments, just look at, hey, that's why I have all my stuff written out. Like, hey, I train these times, these days, this. And I'm like, man, shit, my body's just feeling beat up. I'm like, how long have you been doing these? I'm like, fuck, 3 weeks. I need to take recovery week. So I'll still train, but less intensity to get my body to rebound. It's called a deload week. So I'll deload this week and then I'll feel amazing. It's time to ramp back up again. So that's kind of like the process. That's my process. I can't speak for every athlete. That's my process, but that's also the process that I have helped my teammates with too. When they have fights coming up, it's like, hey, look, you're about 5 weeks going hard. Let's pull back this week. I see you kind of bonking out at the end of practice. Let's like pull back. And then, okay, next week it's like, oh, I feel like $1,000,000 again. I'm like, cool. Let's ramp it back up. And 2 weeks from the fight, I'm like, we got to pull back because we got to get your body ready to cut weight. Boom. Weight cut week, deload week. Cut the weight. That's stressful enough. Now, fight day, you feel like $1,000,000. Now we good to go. So it's kind of like the process that I've learned over like my years of fighting, as well as Cole Miller and Bubby Mitchell and Lathan Lawson, having that kind of team around you to help guide you and not just be a meathead and saying, oh, go hard spar today and tomorrow and the next day and lift weights in the morning and do jujitsu at night and then wrestle. And it's like, you're going to break down.
Yes, it's just like old school thinking that you have to do something all the time. It's no time for rest, for recovery. It's just train, do more, and it's like not the best solution in 2024.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. We still train hard. We train hard a lot, but it's like managing your hard training sessions. So like if you get hurt, that hurt doesn't turn into an injury, or like, hey, your body's not doing what it's supposed to do. Like, are you good? Or like, hey, I don't like the way you're sparring when we do hard sparring. Let's pull off the hard sparring and work more on technical sparring until you look sharp again. You know, so it's like it's about monitoring that. But like athletes, we're all our worst critic. We always think where it's never enough. So like having your team to be like, hey, pull back, do this, that, and the third is kind of like why they're there. So it's the perfect little compliment, you know?
Okay, Moon. So many thanks for the conversation. We will do part number two in like a few weeks, also
Yes.
before your fight, to see how your training is going and what shape are you in that moment.
Yes. Yes, for sure. I'll look forward to it.